Is living near your kids in old age a huge mistake according to Buddhism? The illusion of comfort. Is living near your children in old age the key to happiness? Or could it unknowingly be a path to deeper suffering? This question challenges conventional beliefs deeply rooted in societal norms. Many assume that as we grow older, being close to family guarantees emotional support, companionship, and security. But what if this very assumption is flawed? What if the pursuit of familial closeness in old age inadvertently creates emotional dependencies that lead to disappointment, frustration, and even suffering? Drawing from Buddhist philosophy, particularly Zen teachings, this exploration will challenge the traditional narrative. Through personal reflections, thought-provoking stories, and Buddhist wisdom, we'll uncover why detachment, not attachment, can be the true source of peace and fulfillment in our later years. Chapter 1. The Desire for Closeness. Growing older often brings a desire to reconnect with family. After decades spent building careers, raising children, and navigating life's demands, many find themselves longing for the warmth of familial ties. Imagine an elderly man who spent his prime years diligently providing for his family. As he entered old age, his children moved away to build their own lives, leaving him in a quiet house once filled with laughter. Driven by the belief that proximity equals connection, he moves closer to one of his children, hoping to recapture the warmth of family life. Initially, it feels like the perfect decision. Grandchildren greet him with enthusiasm. His child visits regularly, and his heart feels full. But slowly, the reality sets in. Chapter 2. The Illusion of Happiness. As months pass, the frequency of visits dwindles. Busy schedules, new priorities, and life's pace overshadow the initial enthusiasm. The elderly man finds himself waiting by the phone, hoping for calls that come less frequently. The house feels lonelier despite being physically closer to family. The illusion deepens when we equate external conditions with inner fulfillment. The elderly man believed that being physically close to his family would automatically nourish his heart with warmth and connection. However, proximity without genuine engagement becomes just another empty vessel. Conversations grow mechanical, filled with routine questions rather than heartfelt exchanges. The silence between words becomes louder than the words themselves. True emotional closeness is cultivated through mindful presence, sincere interest, and shared experiences, not merely by occupying the same space. The heart craves understanding, not just attention. The elderly man's loneliness does not stem from the absence of people, but from the absence of meaningful connection. This realization leads to a profound insight rooted in Buddhist wisdom. Attachment to expectations breeds suffering. The expectation that others should fulfill our emotional needs often blinds us to the impermanent nature of relationships. Everything changes, people grow, priorities shift, and life moves on. When we anchor our happiness to these transient conditions, disappointment is inevitable. The elderly man learns that peace arises not from clinging to what was, but from embracing what is, without judgment or longing. In this acceptance lies a deeper form of connection, one not dependent on frequent visits or constant communication, but on a heart free from expectations. Compassion towards oneself and others replaces resentment. The man finds solace not in waiting for calls, but in cherishing the memories, in being present with his own thoughts, and in understanding that love transcends physical presence when the heart lets go of illusions. Chapter 3. The Burden of Expectations. The elderly man's heart feels heavy, burdened not by loneliness, but by the invisible chains of expectations he forged over the years. His sacrifices, once acts of unconditional love, have quietly transformed into emotional investments, with the silent hope of returns in the form of gratitude, attention, and care from his children. This unspoken contract, however, exists only in his mind. The more reality deviates from this script, the deeper his resentment grows. But as he reflects on the Zen master's words, a shift occurs. He realizes that love, when tied to expectations, loses its purity. True compassion, as Buddhism teaches, is selfless, free from the need for recognition or reciprocation. His suffering is not caused by his children's absence, but by the narrative he clings to, "I deserve because I gave." Gradually, he begins to let go. Each moment of release feels like dropping a stone from a heavy load. He learns to cherish his memories without turning them into debts owed. The warmth of his love remains, now untainted by disappointment. In this liberation, he discovers a profound peace, a heart that gives freely, without the burden of expecting anything in return. Chapter 4. The Realization of Attachment. As he delves deeper into meditation, the layers of his attachments slowly unravel. He recognizes that his longing for his children's attention was not just a desire for connection, but a fragile anchor for his sense of purpose. Without their presence, he felt invisible, as if his existence held less meaning. This painful clarity reveals an overlooked truth. His identity had been entangled with roles and relationships, not with his true self. Reflecting on the Buddha's wisdom, he understands that attachment is not just to people, but to the illusions we build around them, the belief that our worth is defined by how others see us. This realization feels both liberating and unsettling. For the first time, he sits with himself, not as a father, not as someone expecting love in return, but simply as a being, breathing, observing, existing. Gradually, a quiet shift takes place. He starts finding contentment in simple things: the warmth of sunlight on his skin, the rhythm of his breath, the stillness within. These moments, small yet profound, reveal that happiness isn't granted by others, but grows from self-awareness and acceptance. By releasing his attachments, he reconnects with a deeper, unconditional peace, one that no absence can diminish. Chapter 5. The Dangers of Dependence. As the elderly man reflects on his emotional dependence, he realizes that it's not love but fear that has tethered him to his children's attention. Fear of solitude, fear of insignificance, and fear of facing life without the validation he once took for granted. This emotional reliance has left him fragile, vulnerable to disappointment whenever his expectations go unmet. Through contemplation, he understands the deeper meaning of the parable. True strength doesn't come from avoiding burdens or shifting them onto others, but from embracing and learning from them. By expecting his children to carry his emotional needs, he unknowingly denied himself the opportunity to cultivate inner resilience. Determined to reclaim his emotional independence, he shifts his focus inward. He starts small, finding joy in daily rituals, appreciating the present moment, and reconnecting with his own interests beyond family roles. Each step, though modest, reinforces his self-reliance. Gradually, he discovers that emotional strength isn't about being unaffected by life's challenges, but about facing them with equanimity. In releasing his dependency, he doesn't lose love. Instead, he frees it from the weight of expectation. This newfound clarity brings not just peace but a deeper, more authentic connection with himself and others. Chapter 6. The Path to Inner Peace. As the elderly man embraces this shift, he realizes that true happiness is not a grand event but a collection of quiet, unnoticed moments. The gentle steam rising from his morning tea, the soft rustle of leaves swaying in the breeze, the tender glow of dawn light filtering through the window. These simple experiences become sacred when observed with mindfulness. He begins to practice gratitude, not for what he receives from others, but for what life offers unconditionally. Each breath becomes a reminder of life's impermanence and beauty. The silence that once felt heavy with loneliness now feels spacious, filled with the subtle rhythms of existence. Buddha's words, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without," resonate deeper with each passing day. He no longer measures his worth by external validation or fleeting connections. Instead, he nurtures a quiet companionship with himself, embracing both his strengths and vulnerabilities. Through meditation and reflection, he cultivates equanimity, a steady mind untouched by the highs and lows of life's changes. His heart softens, not from the absence of suffering, but from understanding its nature. In letting go of the need to control, to hold, or to expect, he discovers the essence of inner peace, a state of being that arises naturally when the mind is clear, the heart is open, and the soul is free. Chapter 7. The Freedom of Letting Go. As the elderly man embraces the art of letting go, he experiences a transformation that is both subtle and profound. He realizes that holding on, whether to expectations, past grievances, or unspoken hopes, had created invisible walls around his heart. These walls, though built from love, were reinforced by fear of being forgotten, fear of losing significance, fear of emptiness. But as he loosens his grip on these attachments, something unexpected happens. His heart feels lighter, more spacious, capable of embracing life as it is, not as he wished it to be. The absence of expectations dissolves the tension in his relationships. When he speaks to his children, his words are no longer laced with unspoken demands for attention or gratitude. Instead, his presence becomes a gift, free from the burden of needing to be acknowledged or validated. Ironically, in releasing control, he fosters deeper connections. His children visit not out of obligation, but from a genuine desire to share time with someone who welcomes them without judgment or hidden expectations. The conversations flow naturally, filled with warmth rather than the pressure to fulfill emotional debts. Through this journey, the elderly man learns that letting go isn't about losing. It's about creating space for love, for understanding, for peace. True freedom arises not from having everything we want, but from realizing we need nothing to be whole. In this liberation, he discovers the most authentic bond of all, one rooted in acceptance, not attachment. Chapter 8. Embracing Impermanence. As the elderly man contemplates the nature of impermanence, he realizes that much of his suffering stemmed from resisting life's inevitable changes. He had clung tightly to roles and identities, the proud father, the needed caregiver, believing they were permanent fixtures in his existence. But like autumn leaves that once flourished in spring, everything eventually transforms. Through mindful reflection, he understands that his children were never possessions to be held onto but souls on their own journeys. His role as a parent, once central, has naturally shifted with time. Instead of feeling abandoned, he now sees the beauty in this evolution. Just as he once guided their first steps, they are now walking their own paths, not away from him, but toward their own destinies. This realization doesn't bring sorrow, it brings a quiet peace. The man learns to cherish the fleeting nature of life, knowing that impermanence gives meaning to every moment. Joy is found not in holding on but in fully experiencing the present, without grasping, without fear. By embracing impermanence, he discovers freedom. His love for his children becomes unconditional, no longer tied to expectations or roles. It simply exists, fluid and expansive, like a river that flows naturally, unburdened by the need to control its course. In this acceptance, he finds a profound serenity, a heart open to life's ebb and flow, welcoming each moment as it comes and goes. Chapter 9. Finding Joy in Solitude. In the stillness of solitude, the elderly man begins to unravel the subtle difference between being alone and feeling lonely. At first, the silence seemed overwhelming, like an empty echo of days gone by. But as he settles into these quiet moments, he notices something profound. Beneath the absence of external noise lies a serene, untouched space within himself, a space he had long overlooked. Sipping tea, he no longer rushes through the motions. He feels the warmth of the cup against his hands, inhales the delicate aroma, and savors each sip as if it holds the essence of the present moment. In tending to his garden, every leaf, every bloom becomes a silent teacher, reflecting the impermanence and beauty of life. Meditation deepens this connection, allowing him to observe his thoughts like passing clouds, realizing he is not his thoughts, nor his emotions, but the vast sky that holds them all. Through these simple rituals, He discovers that joy isn't something to be found outside, but something to be uncovered within. He no longer seeks validation from others to feel whole. Instead, he embraces solitude as a sacred space, a sanctuary where he reconnects with his true nature, free from the masks and roles imposed by society. This realization doesn't diminish the value of companionship, but reframes it. Relationships become meaningful not because they fill a void, but because they are shared from a place of wholeness. The elderly man understands that true contentment isn't the absence of solitude, but the presence of inner peace. A quiet joy that blossoms from within, untouched by the comings and goings of the external world. Chapter 10. The Wisdom of Non-Attachment. As the elderly man embraces the wisdom of non-attachment, he realizes that true love flourishes in freedom, not possession. Non-attachment isn't about withdrawing from life or suppressing emotions. It's about experiencing deeply without the fear of loss. He begins to see that his suffering wasn't caused by his children's absence, but by his own need to control and hold on to what was never meant to be permanent. With this insight, his heart softens. He loves his children not for what they give him, but simply because they exist. His affection is no longer entangled with expectations. He engages with life fully, appreciating each moment as it is, without wishing it to be different. In letting go, he discovers a profound peace, an unshakable contentment that arises from embracing impermanence and allowing life to flow naturally. Chapter 11. The Full Circle of Life. As the elderly man reflects on the full circle of life, he recognizes that each phase carries its own purpose and beauty. Nurturing his children was once his source of fulfillment, but now he turns that same care inward. This shift isn't a sign of loss but of natural progression. Just as seasons change, so do the roles we play. He understands that life's cycle isn't linear but a continuous flow of beginnings and transformations. Embracing self-reliance, he discovers new growth within, not bound by age or circumstance. This phase isn't an end. It's an opportunity to deepen wisdom, cultivate inner peace, and reconnect with the essence of simply being. Chapter 12. The Legacy of Peace. As he approaches the end of life, the elderly man feels an unexpected serenity, not born from achievements but from acceptance. He no longer seeks to hold on to people or moments. Instead, he simply is present, open, and at peace. His relationships flourish naturally because they are free from expectations, nurtured by genuine presence and unconditional love. His legacy isn't written in possessions or accolades, but in the quiet wisdom he embodies. Through his journey from attachment to inner freedom, he leaves behind a silent testament that true wealth lies in a peaceful heart. And the greatest gift one can offer is the example of a life lived with mindfulness, compassion, and grace. Conclusion: the true mistake. The biggest mistake isn't living near your children. It's believing they're responsible for your happiness. True fulfillment arises not from others, but from embracing life's impermanence, cultivating inner peace, and living authentically. As the Buddha said, you yourself must strive. The Buddhas only point the way. Let this story be your guide, not just in old age, but in every stage of life.